Yeah. And we want to leave time for a good conversation. So I hear an echo. Is that okay? Are we good, technical folks? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie from Reconciliation Saskatoon, and we are a collective of now over 115 different businesses, nonprofits, organizations, individuals coming together to try and get more people engaged in truth and reconciliation. And so we're really excited that we can start the conversation about Reimagining Canada Day. And we're especially grateful to the Remai Modern. They were the first ones that said, hey, do you have a venue for this conversation? Because we want to be at the table. We want this to happen here. So thank you to the Remai for that. Yesterday was part one. We started breaking down the conversation of Canada Day and revealing hidden parts of the story. And so today, as we continue rewriting the story of Canada Day, we have to start with the land. So I would like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. I want to express my gratitude to the land, for it gave me my life. And I also want to start rewriting this story by acknowledging the first people who are on this land, the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota, Lakota, Dakota peoples. It's these people who are teaching me my relationship to the land, my responsibility to land, to Indigenous peoples in Canada, to each other. So welcome to all of you, and thank you for getting engaged in this conversation. Not only in this room, we are also on live stream. We're very excited to have our virtual folks out there in the world too. And we're going to have our speakers. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you are attending on the live stream, you can put questions in the Q&A anytime. And we'll get to those questions at the end, probably closer to about 1 o'clock. We'll start the Q&A. And I'm really, really excited that Lyndon Linklater is here as our knowledge keeper, as our moderator for this event. Lyndon is a traditional knowledge keeper, and as you heard, he's a pretty great storyteller. He has an educational background in Indigenous social work, Indigenous studies, and law. He's a citizen of Thunderchild First Nation in Treaty 6 and has roots in Couchiching First Nation in Treaty 3. As a knowledge keeper, Lyndon is called upon by community to assist in ceremony, protocols, and advice. With that, I will hand it over to Lyndon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. You can hear me okay out there? Cool. How many fingers am I holding behind my back then? I want to start off by singing my dear friends, my relatives in the spiritual sense, sitting in this theater right now, we're related, we're relatives. So in a spiritual sense, all my relations, I want to welcome you to the Remai Modern. I actually work here. This is where I work. I love working here. So I want to acknowledge some of my Remai Modern colleagues. There's Kelly in the back there. She's really helpful in setting all this up. I don't know if there's anybody else from Remai Modern. Anybody? Oh, there's another one over there. 1, little 2, little 3, little Remai Modern, 4 little. Anyways, want to acknowledge Remai Modern. As I mentioned, I really love working here. My title here is Indigenous Relations Advisor, and I'm here half-time permanent. And so I'm actually an employee of the City of Saskatoon, because Remai Modern is part of the City of Saskatoon. But I'm here half-time permanent by choice, because as Carrie introduced, I'm also what is called a knowledge keeper. So I get called upon quite a bit by people, by community agencies, organizations, institutions to help in terms of Indigenous advice, in terms of protocol, and in terms of ceremony. I didn't know I was going to be a knowledge keeper once upon a time. Like, it just how things turned out. So anyways, that's the role I play here at the museum. And right now, just to share with everyone, because I'm plugging Remai Modern, right? But because I really love working here, Remai Modern has created this 5-year strategic plan. And there are 4 goals to their strategic plan. And very, like awesomely enough, goal number 4 is called Truth and Reconciliation and Self-Determination. So that's what they've set this goal, and like it's a big long, to read about it, what it's all about or whatever. But anyway, just by itself, those words, truth and reconciliation and self-determination. So like this museum, that's the direction where it's going. And like I think it's so cool. Like and we are like many other agencies, institutions, and organizations in this country that are like changing. Maybe you've heard of this term decolonization. So the museum is in the process of decolonializing. And so what does that mean? So growing up as a young First Nation child, I remember reading these books about the First Nations people, about the Indians, as it was written in the books. And what I remember is whenever the Indians won, it was called a massacre. But when the white people won, it was called a victory. And so that's how it's recorded. The history in this country has been recorded. And since the release of the 94 calls to action by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission around 2016, more and more Canadians are starting to learn like the real history about Canada, the like true history. And there's some really kind of like not so good things about our country here. Before a majority of you walked into the theater here, I did this little riddle about 2 people sitting in the teepee, right? And the point of the riddle is to try and show people that like we've all been taught a certain way, and we have these, they might say unconscious bias, they might say that, or we might have a bias, but the truth of the matter is many Canadian people have been misinformed, have been taught misinformation about Indigenous peoples, about Métis peoples, about First Nations peoples, that we are inferior, that we weren't as smart as the colonizers, that our ways were primitive, and so this has been reinforced. Anyways, this is all part of what decolonization is about, and this is one thing that Remai Modern is doing. So I think it's so cool. So I want to welcome all of you to this conversation here, Reimagining Canada Day. Since 2016, as I mentioned, as part of the TRC's 94 calls to action, more and more of us are getting educated about the past. And really, it wasn't really until about a little over a year ago when they found 215 children in a mass grave, unmarked mass grave in Kamloops. And when this event happened in our country, like Canadians were shocked. Canadians were horrified. Canadians were angry, and they want answers. And that's really turned this country to a certain kind of direction. And so more and more questions were being asked. And now what has happened, in my opinion, it's got to the point where now even the Pope has apologized, the Catholic Pope. And this is very remarkable in that we've been asking for an apology, for a very, very long time from the Roman Catholic Pope, the highest leader in the Catholic Church, and nothing. But now this has changed now. And so anyways, when Canada Day, this was last year, 1 year, almost a year ago, July 1st, 1 year ago, that was the first Canada Day post the Kamloops find. And so for many Indigenous people, we struggled. Why do we want to celebrate Canada Day? Look what they did to us. Why do we want to celebrate that? And it caused a lot of conversation. So here we are now. We're coming up to the second year, which is not that far from today, July 1st. And Canadians are speaking up. Canadians are coming forward. And so I really admire the work that Saskatoon, Reconciliation Saskatoon is doing in terms of promoting education and in terms of creating dialogue and controversy. Because this is my Canada, this is your Canada, this is our Canada, right? And it's up to me and you to make Canada how it's going to be. Like, no government can do that for us. Like, we got to do that. So, if elected, I promise. That's my cheap joke, my cheap election joke. I couldn't help. But anyways, I start off with that conversation here. So we have, till 1:30, and we have some wonderful, dynamic panelists up here. They're going to share. But I'm the moderator, and you get 10 minutes each. And I'm going to kind of go like that when you're 2-minute warning, okay? Just like football. But you get no timeouts. And this is how it's going to work. And I'll introduce each panelist, and they're going to share some perspectives on, what they think about Canada Day, and also to talk about themselves as well, and I'll introduce them. But to start us off, we have a poet in the audience who's going to come and use the podium here. I want to introduce Ahmad Majid. He's an Iraqi-Canadian poet who's been performing hip-hop and spoken word all over Canada for the last decade. His style combines intricate rhyme schemes and important social political issues of human rights. He is a 3-time Slam Team member of the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word 2013 finalist. Please welcome Ahmad Majid.
Thank you so much, Lyndon. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing today? Yeah, great to see these seats filled and people in the audience, and obviously for an event like this. So my name is Ahmad Majid. I'm very thankful and blessed to be here with you today for this event, but I'm also very thankful and blessed to be on this land. I'm what they call a second-generation Canadian, being that my family immigrated to Canada, to this land from Iraq, and then I was born a little shortly after that. So I do have 2 poems to share with you. The first piece that I'm going to share is going to touch a little bit on why I first started writing poetry, why I first started using it as a medium for expression. At the time when I had just finished high school, I had a lot on my mind, a lot that I wanted to get out there, a lot of perspective that I wanted to share. I'd lived most of my life in Saskatchewan, small town Saskatchewan, and a good chunk of my life in the Middle East. And I saw, especially when I was growing up, that huge disconnect that occurred. And so that leads into this first piece, which is called A Poet Without Silence, and really tries to highlight on what a child who had writing aspirations or poetic aspirations may go through living in a war zone. The sound of the sunrise, it shines through my eyes, only to awaken me and despise this day that lays ahead of my demise. I can smell my grave, I should say my goodbyes, but at this time, I feel the most comfort. I forget all the war crimes and rest the mind that's always alert. My nose, it touches the dirt as I pray for peace, but sometimes it's hard to feel self-worth when you're a child living in the Middle East. Now, the same shirt I've been wearing for this last week straight, but trust me, no one around me is staring. Everybody's got their own escapes. Now, this feeling that is great, it starts to come to a screeching halt. The sound of the war drum once again starts pounding harder than my heart. It's like they're playing darts, and have I become the bullseye? Where do I even start? I hate the sound of that missile's cry. I hate all of their lies as well as when concrete collides, but what I hate the most is this great divide. No one here seems to smile, and it always reeks like gas. I'm on my own aisle waiting for those explosions to once again pass. Don't hide near glass. That's a common code. For when the bombs do blast, the chips to your skin, they will corrode. The kids here are getting old and nothing seems to change. If these are my cards I fold, there's nothing left in this age. My blood is boiled by the rage and I feel frustration. It feels like a cage, but it was once the cradle of civilization. It's hard to even gauge because there's so much devastation. We're burning like sage, but there's no room for creation. I rip out a page and start writing viciously. You know, I once heard of a girl of Jewish ancestry. She introduced you to her world and it became a legacy. She talked about the tanks and the weaponry and the clink of the clank of the marmored heavily. I'm just trying to be frank, because this is my therapy. I'm walking a plank, it's like a death penalty, but that's what I do. I just try and live free, but it's hard to concentrate or even to motivate when the shower of rockets can make your conscience suffocate. Sometimes I hear them and they're really, really close. And yes, of course, I fear them. I don't want to end up as a ghost. All I have is that silence when the noise collapses. I don't want to get violent. Believe me, I once had dreams of beautiful gardens, palaces, and mansions. Just give me a chance. This isn't a rant. It's a desperate plea for humanity. I'm trying to take a stand because I'm sick of watching people die by violence, but I'm even sicker of always waiting for it to once again become silent. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you so much. So as I was saying, when I first started writing, I felt there was a disconnect. And that disconnect happened because of how sometimes people see each other as the other. When we have this disconnect between us and we think, oh, that's not me, or that's not my family, or my community, or my neighbors, we're very quick to pass off on whatever travesty, whatever atrocities happen to those people. But the more we realize that we are similar, despite your culture, despite where you come from, despite the privilege that you may have, we all have some similarities to us, some uniform in our desires. We want to be successful. We want to be happy. We want to have a fulfilling life. If you have children, you want to see them grow up and be happy and successful. And the more we can hone in on those commonalities, the stronger that we are going to be as a collective. I have one more piece to share with you. This next piece is probably the most important to me personally, and really touches on what my obligation is as a newcomer to this land. And just so we're all clear in this room, unless you have Indigenous ancestry in you, you're all once newcomers to this land. And we all have a debt to pay to making sure that we push truth and reconciliation forward in whatever it is, our personal spheres, our professional spheres, and we're always a champion for that. From Turtle Island to the sands of ancient Babylon, both of our peoples have a history of times when our foundations were strong. Now it's been rocked, made to feel like we don't belong. Discrimination, it must stop before it's passed on. It spreads like a disease, making it hard to breathe. The anxiety creeps up, making you feel weak at the knees. You can feel incomplete when the stairs are pointed in your direction. Whenever you're made to feel like the other, I promise you it puts your self-worth into question. But now that I'm older and I've learned a few lessons, I've been able to zoom out on a system full of oppression. Systematic racism is institutionalized from such a young age, from Disney movies to playful caricatures. Those racialized dolls can only constrain it. Becomes like training playing cowboys and Indians. The bad guys are always dark-skinned and the winners always look like they descend from England. Getting a little older for children, sports become ingrained in their essence. You cheer for the Cleveland Indian, the Chicago Blackhawk, or the Washington Redskin. The dehumanization of a culture, it gets perpetuated in the news, and it doesn't help when racist teachers aren't screened for their views. Presenting false truths can make a child hate their identity, especially when they are addressed by their peers strictly based on their ethnicity, forcing antisocial tendencies. How do you reverse an attempt to completely try and eliminate a culture? Well, it's got to start with examining the foundations of that crooked structure. They tell us to be patriotic and we need to be proud of our history, like Columbus Day being celebrated and his mission considered a victory. We can't stand for that bigotry. We have to see what the future holds in store. We got to become active, like the principles of Idle No More. We're fighting a war and it starts on the inside. Look within yourself. See what you can find. Sharpen up your mind and see through the silly politricks, policies that are problematic unless you are in that social class that is dominant. No money for social improvement, but of course, build another monument. Residential schools and internment camps. Is this the land of the tolerant? Oh, Canada. It was a home built on native land. So I'm so grateful for my allies with whom I can take a stand towards these policies of injustice. We need to create a plan, and it has to start with unity towards your fellow woman and man. Call them brothers and sisters, see them as friends that you haven't yet made. But these values that now we're calling modern come from the traditional indigenous ways. So I'm so thankful to breathe this clean air and have the ability to visit all these beautiful rivers and forests in an instant. If you come from European descent, I gotta ask you, what gives you the right to be such a strong immigration critic in a system of colonial creation? Nobody wants to be reduced to simply a statistic. So to Canada's First Nations, do I acknowledge that I'm so thankful, honored, and blessed to be an immigrant in your district. Thank you so much for your time.
Wow. Ahmad Majid. Cool. Thank you so much for that. So we have 3 panelists. We might have 4. Tala's here. Is she going to come up?
Tala, you want to join us?
Come on up. Right on. Tala Tootoosis, come on down. All right. What's his name? Bob Barker? I would know Bob Barker. I don't know about these guys would know Bob Barker. Come on up and Hannah will help you with that mic. She's going to mic you up. She's coming. So you're going to get 10 minutes. I'm going to time you. You're going to hear this thing beep. When it beeps, you know your 10 minutes are up. Try to finish, you know. That's how it's going to work here. I got this thing works real good, this timer here. So, yeah, when you guys start, I'm going to put my clock on. It's going to go off when your 10 minutes are up. So, anyway, so we'll get underway here, and they're miking up Tala there, so you'll meet Tala in a bit here. I want to introduce Allison Forsberg. She organized Bring Them Home, which was an event at the Kiwanis Park of the last year's Canada Day 2021. And it helped to raise awareness and provide opportunities for action and healing with over 4,000 people in Saskatoon. Since the age of 11, which is what, 20 years ago?
No, I'm 19.
Since the age of 11, Allison has been pushing for change and speaking out against injustice through various initiatives. And she is the assistant Wapake coordinator at Choke Cherry Studios. Please welcome Allison Forsberg.
I just want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who came today. I guess reconciliation, coming together and being here and showing up is like the first important step, and a round of applause for yourselves because that's super, super important. Since the age of 11, I've been raised to be very aware of my First Nations background. I am adopted by a European family, and I've grown up with white peers and being in the white education system and growing up in the city. And I recognize that I am very privileged to have the opportunities I do have, but also the challenges in finding myself in a colonial world. I guess since I was 11, a big step for me in figuring out who I am and just like the steps towards taking actions to make our future generations better was joining politics. So I was part of the Saskatchewan Youth New Democrats since I was 12 years old.
That's not you, no.
And I feel like being in politics was a real big eye-opener and understanding how politics are super important, but also community is more important. And I feel like with community is when we really grow. So last year, I just graduated high school. So that's, during that time, that was when they found the 251 children at the residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia. And I remember just feeling so enraged. Just finding peace with myself and recognizing that I do come from a country that doesn't seem to care for Indigenous people. I know they say they do, and I know that there are many people who are working towards that change. But at that time, I was 18 years old, and I just felt so lost. My family has done a lot of advocacy work, and that was when I started planning the Bring Them Home event. So it started out as a small idea, talking with my mom and my sisters about bringing people together at Kiwanis Memorial Park and having speakers. The steps I took coming into that were really quick, and I feel like everything happened like this, and this. For me, it was really important to have people to have the opportunity to share their voice and talk about their experience with Canada Day. And for me, for a long time, I felt celebrating Canada Day was celebrating genocide in a country that tried to eradicate our Indigenous people. I've always grown up being told that I come from strong people because the government tried to kill us and they failed. So having that power within me to be able to recognize that I can make change, that the community can make change, and that our Indigenous people can make change was very empowering. So around this time when I was planning for the Cancel Canada Day event, my event was called Bring Them Home, and the plan was to have it on July 1st, just as a representation that what we're celebrating is very wrong. Choke Cherry Studios, I met them a year ago, and very, very amazing programming. They're an art studio for youth. They offer much more services than just art. They provide community empowerment, bringing speakers to talk to the youth. And I feel like having those for Indigenous youth, or like our youth in general, was amazing. And myself being a youth and trying to put this all together, having them come and asking if I want to collaborate was very meaningful. So last year on July 1st, 2021, we planned our first Cancel Canada Day event, and we had over 4,000 people. The day was filled with so much activities, and we had a feast and pipe ceremony, and that was at 7 to 8ish, and then our closing around the day was around 9 o'clock at night, and we finished with the candlelit vigil. That event was very, very empowering, and I'm not sure who in the audience have went, but there's just so much beauty. I feel like with advocacy and planning things like this, often when there's a lot of something, and if it's like easy and accessible, you don't see as many people going to use it as a resource because they're able to reach that. But with the Cancel Canada Day event, obviously, when we saw all those 4,000 people, they felt like there was something really lacking in the community. And being able to provide that was like so amazing. Following the Cancel Canada Day event, it kind of let us spark into the youth at Choke Cherry, and we continued to do other events, such as painting the crosswalk on Broadway, and we had it painted orange with Cree syllabics that meant remembrance. And that was honoring the residential school survivors. And just having community members come out and being able to participate in that just led a bunch of other activities. This past year, we had our first Truth and Reconciliation Day acknowledged by the Saskatchewan government, I'm pretty sure. And I put together the Kiskawasin smudge walk. So it was very similar to Cancel Canada Day event, and there's about 4,000 people there as well. So seeing events like that, you really see how community is super, super important in places like Saskatoon, especially for Indigenous people. And having people come together like that, to like be in search for that community and getting provided with the needs they come for, it's amazing. So I think Chokeshare has done a lot of amazing things throughout the past year, and I'm happy to be officially hired by them. So as the Wapaki Assistant Coordinator, and those events run on Tuesday and Thursday from 5 o'clock to 9 p.m. and often we have speakers come in or elders to teach ceremony. I feel like myself, being raised by a white family, I did learn about my culture, but I wasn't raised with those cultural practices. And I feel like many other youth who have grown up in foster care or who are adopted, it's a place to really have some soul searching and finding that balance between our colonial world and our Indigenous world, creating that balance. So this year, I'm excited to announce that we are having another Cancel Canada Day event this July 1st. Details will be posted soon, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who came, and thank you for having me speak.
Amazing. You didn't even use up all your time. You're like, but we have virtual participants and also yourselves. We're going to welcome you to ask questions, but at the end, when all 4 panelists speak. So if you have any questions, jot them down, and we'll have you have the mics there. A mic can be brought to you if you're in the middle. But this is not a Jerry Springer show, so no fighting. And anyway, so I'm going to introduce our next panelist here. This is Michael Afenfia, and he's a diversity, settlement, and inclusion practitioner based in Saskatchewan. He's an author of 5 critically acclaimed novels. As a law and business administration graduate, he has been a banker, a communicator, speechwriter, and biographer to notable individuals in his home country, which is Nigeria. Please welcome Michael.
Thank you so much, Lyndon, for having me. And I'm trying not to have a Grammy acceptance speech cut off the mic moment. So I'm also going to be timing myself. I would like to start, like everyone else, by acknowledging that as a newcomer, I'm deeply appreciative of this land. I'm deeply appreciative of the welcoming I have received so far. When I think about it, it's amazing that I'm not quite 3 years old in Canada, so I'm still what they call a PR. And by August 4th, which is now my 2nd birthday, I would be eligible for citizenship. But that doesn't mean as much to me as the opportunities I have received, the welcoming I've received by the true owners of the land. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. And yeah, I would like to tell a story, not because I'm a writer, but because the story touched me, and the story happened just yesterday. Yesterday, I was invited to Alberta to do a presentation to a couple of seventh graders. So you can imagine, how old they are. And we had been talking for about a month, trying to set up the event. And then I drove into Alberta yesterday morning. The event was to start at 9. And I got there a few minutes before 9. And as I approached the door, there was this little black girl waiting for me at the door, and she was really excited to see me, and I didn't know why. Like, she was super pumped just seeing me. And then she says, "Oh, Michael," like she even knew me already. And then, she dragged me and took me to her class, and we got into the class, and there were like over 20, kids her age, and she was the only black kid in the class. And my presentation, of course, was about anti-racism, racism, and all that. So I did my presentation, and it was time for me to leave. They thanked me, and on my way out back to the parking lot, I hear someone, like calling my name, and I look back, and it's the teacher, and the teacher and this black kid, and they say, "Oh, no, please, can you stop for a minute?" Like, the teacher says, "This kid desperately wants to take a photo with you, and that she's really happy you came, and she has been pushing for this event to happen, because even in that school in Alberta, which is not too far away from here, in a very urbanized part of Canada, she's gone through so much." And so just seeing another black person, an older black person, come to her school and speak to everybody in the class about what it means to be black in Canada, it was such an inspiration for her. And we took that photo, and I got into the car, and for a while, I couldn't even start the car. And I was asking myself, did I say enough? Did I say something that would help her? Did I say something that would encourage her? And I just sat in my car thinking about it. And I thought about every black person in Canada, every black child, boy or girl in Canada. And I thought about the first black person who's recorded to have come to Canada in 1608. And if he was somehow to rise up from the dead, if that was possible, and gets to be told that so many years later that some black person is still made to feel different, is still made to feel like they don't matter, is still made to feel like they don't belong, and this girl was born in Canada, then why are we celebrating? Did I say enough to her? And that was my question to myself. And so as I reflected on Canada Day, I said to myself, it's really not about, the slogans. Canada Day is not a hashtag. Canada Day is much more than that. It's the consistency. That's what I see. It's the consistency of a color, and that color is orange. It's the consistency of a message, a very simple message that from year to year, every single year, every single July 1st, that we tell ourselves, we tell our friends, we tell our neighbors, most importantly, we tell the First Nations and Indigenous peoples of Canada, people from the Métis Nation, that we will not forget. We will not forget. I think that's what Canada Day means for me. I come from a country, Nigeria, and I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity of being here, Lyndon. The other day we were on the radio station, and when you spoke about the things to be thankful for, I totally get it. There's so many things to be thankful for. I left my country at a time when there was no war, but I couldn't sleep at night. When the gunshot starts and it's armed robbers or kidnappers, we have to hide our kids in the bathroom. So I came to Canada, and for the first time, I could close my eyes and sleep at night. I didn't have to worry about anybody, coming to the door and taking me away and asking for ransom, or my kids for that matter. I'm thankful for everything Canada has provided for me, including this opportunity to be here. Less than 3 years of being in Canada, I can have an opportunity like this to engage, I'm deeply, deeply grateful. But in spite of that gratitude, even above that gratitude is the truth, which we cannot deny, that it's not just our history, it's even our present. And things, they just have to change. Again, I come from a country where we forget. And if you were someone who read the news or followed the news or even social media, and you Googled Nigeria, in the last 1 month, maybe 500, and the sad thing is we don't even know what that number is, right? Because it keeps changing, and depending on who you are talking to, the number of people who have been kidnapped and are not yet back home, the number of people who have been killed in bomb blasts, the train explosion, whatever, those numbers keep increasing. And only a few years ago, there was a very popular hashtag called Bring Back Our Girls, because some girls had gone to school and they were kidnapped. And as we speak, a good number of them, this was like 2014 or so, if my memory serves me right. As we speak, those girls, some of them have not yet come back home. And guess what? My country forgot. Will Canada forget? Will Canada forget? And if you ask me, like, one grave is too much. One child not coming back home is too much. One person not being able to get a job because of the color of their skin or the accent with which they speak English or French, because of how their name sounds, because they have something over their head. Just one person having to go through pain, agony, trauma, it's enough. And we should not forget. So when it's July 1st, I'll be thinking about that little girl in Alberta. And I'll be wondering and asking myself, will she be okay? Are we going to help her? Are we going to help her? And, we're preaching to the choir, right? I think that we do that a lot. We keep talking to the same people. It's always the same people in the room, the ones who already know. That's a good start, but that number has to increase. And that's what Canada Day, for me, signifies. I'm deeply committed to the color orange, and I'm deeply committed to the message that we will not forget. And as a black person in Canada, as a newcomer to Canada, I would say that I see myself as an ally. I see that us newcomers have come here to amplify the voices of every indigenous person, First Nations, Métis. We have come to amplify your voices. We have come to offer our friendship. We have come to offer love. We have come to offer kinship. And that's what Canada Day means to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to move things right along here. Autumn LaRose Smith is a proud queer Métis student who attends Saskatchewan Urban Native Teachers Education Program, which is acronym is SUNTEP, and is currently the president of the Provincial Métis Youth Council and Minister of Youth for the Métis Nation Saskatchewan. Prior to being elected, Autumn worked as the Programs and Outreach Administrator for We Matter, a national Indigenous youth-led nonprofit dedicated to Indigenous youth empowerment, support, hope, and life promotion. Please welcome Autumn LaRose Smith.
Thanks everyone for coming here, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to be a part of this day. I have to say, when I was first reached out to about being a part of a Canada Day or event, or that's all I saw, I immediately held my breath to think, oh God, what have I done to have been invited to a Canada Day celebration? So I'm grateful I looked more into the email to learn what this day was about. And I thought back of a picture of me in grade 9. Growing up, for some reason in elementary school, I always hated standing for O Canada Day, and I would always fight with my teachers and I'd get in trouble and have to do it. And I never knew why. I never had anyone in my family tell me not to stand for O Canada Day or things like that. It just was like something inside of me something about it just made me feel so uncomfortable. And I was so jealous of the students in my class who were allowed to not stand for O Canada Day for religious reasons or whatever that were recognized by my principal. And then I also think back to, there's a picture of me in grade 9, and I'm fully adorned in white and red with my friends, and we have the Canada Day flag wrapped around us, and we're sitting in the Diefenbaker Park. And I think about that day and how amazing it felt to be hanging out with my friends. When you're in grade 9, and I think when you're a teenager and you don't have the opportunity to hang out with your friends, it feels like your life is ending, because that is your life. And so if my friends are going to Canada Day, then that meant that I would be the most proud Canadian that Saskatchewan has ever seen to go to Canada Day. And now I look back, and every time I look at that picture, I think, oh, how amazing it was to be so ignorant and living in that ignorant bliss of celebrating for Canada Day. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at now. Now that I've learned more and about my own history, I think when I went to school, the Métis, the resistance was taught as the rebellion. And so, and like you had said, it was taught as a massacre. And learning more about my own history and my culture and my heritage and the wrongdoings and the harm that Indigenous people in Canada face, it breaks my heart to think that I ever once celebrated Canada Day. And there is the calls to action, the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action in Canada. I think there's a report just done by the Yellowhead Institute recently, but it's still unclear how many of those calls to action have actually been followed through on. And part of those calls to action actually address the celebration of Canada Day. And when you still see Canada Day happening now, you still see seas of red and white, and it's such a cheerful and joyous celebration for a lot of people. And I think, to be blissfully ignorant, what that must feel like. If someone could erase all my memories and I could just be blissfully ignorant. And even the Canada Day celebration that's happening this year, I was looking into the programming, and there's statements on we all have a role to play in truth and reconciliation, and there's learning throughout the weekend or the day that's happening, but at the end of the day there's still fireworks. And could you imagine learning about your family member who's died and going to their funeral, and at the end of the day there's still fireworks? And so you think about, we have Indigenous Peoples Day, and we have Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th that's formally recognized, but, at the end of the day, there's still fireworks happening on Canada Day. And so sure, you can make sure that during the Canada Day celebration that's happening on July 1st, you can, make sure that you're going to the drum and dance performances from 5 to 6, and the Knowledge Keepers for the hour that they're doing it. Or you could go on the bouncy castle that's happening at the exact same time. And the fact that there's always the option, right? And I think Canada Day only has the power that we give it, just like anything only has the power that we give it. And so we have, amazing young Indigenous advocates and youth here who are planning a celebration or a day of recognition and reconciliation on the exact same day. And so you have a choice. Are you going to choose to continue to live in the bliss and the ignorance, or are you going to relinquish the power that it has over you and go to another event that's happening the same day? And so the Canada Day website, it has a line of, we all have a role to play in reconciliation, and I hear that all the time. We all have a role to play. We all have a role to play. Well, what is your role? Can you define your role? As an individual in this room, can you specifically define your role in reconciliation? It's hard to think about, well, what can I do? Well, now you have options, right? Now there's another day, another thing that you can do on the exact same day, or just not go at all, or do something entirely different. You have other holidays to celebrate. Go, Thanksgiving, that's another problematic one, right? Christmas, sure, there you have another one. So, every day is Canada Day if you're a white settler. in my mind, when I think about Canada Day, I can't imagine acknowledging the Indigenous peoples in Canada and racialized people in Canada are disproportionately at harm than non-racialized and non-Indigenous people in Canada. And then going, anyways, now here's the DJ coming on stage, and make sure you go down to the floor and boogie. The disconnect, it just seems so crazy to me. And I really loved your first poem about the disconnect, because it's easy there, it's comfortable there. And you don't have to think about what your role is in reconciliation because it's comfortable there. And something so simple as saying, well, what if you just didn't cover yourself in the flag and wear red and white and go that one day out of your whole year, what if you just didn't do that? Everyone loves fireworks, unless you don't love fireworks. But fireworks are so amazing to go see. They're so beautiful to go see. But that's, missing out on it one day of fireworks is nothing. Is nothing compared to what other people might experience that you benefit from because they experience those things. And you in general, the general population. And so, when I think about reimagining Canada Day, I think, well, it's happening. It's been happening for a long time. I'm grateful that we're given opportunities and platforms to have a voice now that people can actually, maybe join in our imagination and be a part of that and be a part of that celebration. But you have two choices now. You can go to this event that's organized by young Indigenous youth that's talking about, the horrors that Canada has done to Indigenous peoples, but it's still yet a celebration of Indigenous people in Canada. Or you can go to this other one. And I have to admit, especially during COVID, we've seen a patriotism raise quite a bit. And now I see, when I'm biking or driving down the street and I see a Canadian flag hanging out of somebody's car, it scares me. I don't like what it's associated to anymore. And so knowing that there's people like that in the crowd on Canada Day, just one person who can be racist and doing harm, knowingly doing harm in that crowd, you're now associated with them. And so do you want to be a part of that? I wouldn't. And so this Canada Day, and I won't be going to go see the fireworks or be dressing myself in red and white. And I'll acknowledge my grade 9 self and thank myself for the healing and the work that I've done, but also acknowledging that that was creating harm. And so what can I do now to fix that? And yeah, I'm going to miss out. But I know that there's going to be other exciting things and family and friends that are just going to welcome me in. And so I was also going to mention too, preaching to the choir, events like these, and I'm so grateful that you're all here and that the people on Zoom are tuning in, but I would encourage you to trick one of your friends or family members who loves to celebrate Canada Day and say that you'll pick them up and that you're going to go to Canada Day together and then secretly drive them to the other event. So thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Autumn. Right on. We're doing good for time. We were trying to finish the panel by 10 after 1 and then 20 minutes for conversation, so boom on time here. So Tala Tootoosis is a spoken word artist and the mother of 4 from Sturgeon Lake First Nation in Saskatchewan in Treaty 6 territory. Her tribal background is Plains Cree, Nakota, and Haudenosaunee Bear Clan from Akwesasne, New York. She holds a Bachelor of Indigenous Social Work degree and has been an addictions counselor and mental health therapist. Her work as a seamstress, social worker, speaker, poet, and writer are all platforms she utilizes to help send out her message of healing and empowerment. Please welcome Tala Tootoosis.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tala Tootoosis. Atawalinis yung guts. Riatagwayni hiusqua skasoyan masqua wasisqua. I do come from Sturgeon Lake First Nation, Treaty 6. I am very thankful to be here, and it's so funny because I've had so many poetry performances that I was like, I'll be right back. I'm just gonna go share a couple poems, and then I'll come right back, and I gotta finish my sewing, and then she was like, are you here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting in the back. Ahmad, just watching Ahmad. And she was like, do you want to come sit up here? I'm like, sure. And then he was like, come sit up on the panel. I'm like, oh, that's my chair? I must have not read the email properly. Emails are funny. So before I wanted to share really quick a poem as a spoken word artist. And it's called You Can't Touch My Medallion. Plane rides filled with so many people just going from here to there. Some of y'all don't even know how amazing it is that I'm even on this plane sitting in first class, beading some earrings for a fashion show. I'm sitting here, and as I bead these earrings, you stare, you white woman with your privileged attitudes, wondering what it is I am beading. Then you lean over with a smile as if to say you respect me and who I am and what people I come from. You lean over and ask, what is it that you're beading, dear? Is that a pair of earrings? I take up my headphones as if I didn't hear you, and I smile and half smile and full smile and half smiles, eyes twitch. I answer, yeah, actually they are. And you smile at me as though you approve. You look at me and say, I love your costume, it's so pretty. I look back at you, ready to educate the term costume and Halloween and cultural appropriation, but instead I just sit here. And then I realize and think to myself, wait a minute, you didn't even say costume or that I'm pretty. I'm just so damn used to that I was already trigger happy to the gun that is heavy loaded with trauma, waiting to shoot down your constant questions of, how Indian are you for me today? Well, I am not your Indian. I am not your entertainment. I'm not here for you to gawk and stare at. I'm not, or wait. You know what? You don't even know. Or maybe you do know. Of course you do. It's your white guilt, isn't it, that triggers you to even compliment me because you know exactly what your descendants did to my people. The little interaction between us, I feel so uncomfortable, and every damn, can I touch your hair? Can I see the designs on your skirt? Can I look at your medallion? As many of you have just grabbed my sexual abuse as a child is triggered. My mind is triggered. As I remember how much you all just took our land, extracted minerals from the earth, took our children, took our grandmothers, and now you're taking us women, colonialism. Well, the hell with you. You cannot and will not do this to me anymore. You will not try to make yourself feel better by admiring the work I am wearing that I make. I will not share stories with you on how my grandmother never taught me this. I will not share stories with you on how my mother never taught me this. I will not share stories with you on how my grandmother was ripped out of her mother's hands when she was 4 years old by a white Indian agent and taken to a residential school where they cut her hair and stripped off her innocence through sexual abuse and rape. I will not share stories with you about how my mother was placed in 12 foster homes where she was never taught her culture, abused and abused and abused and abused and abused and belittled. No, because you don't want to know that. You want me to be a happy, pretty little Indian princess untouched by colonialism. You want me to be your equal and not have this rage. So because you don't want to hear about what happened to my people and how it affects me and how amazing it is that I'm even on this plane beating, wearing a ribbon skirt, being a mental health counselor, flying home, sober and educated, you don't get to know that. And you want to know why? Because my decolonization and resilience is none of your business. It's between me and my creator. It's between me and my legacy that I leave behind for my children, my grandchildren, and their grandchildren. You don't get to hear the stories about how my cookum sobered up and became a traditional elder, who eventually one day started to teach me how to carry myself in life and in ceremony. You don't get to hear how my mother sobered up and went back to ceremony, never let me go to foster care, raised me in ceremony, helped me many nights sewing ribbon skirts and beading together. You will never know how even when I started doing drugs like crystal meth and got sober only because my mother and grandmother made me medicine teas because they remembered the songs and the prayers. You will never know that, because the reason that I am beading is because I have anxiety due to my childhood trauma. And this is what comforts me. My skirts is what comforts me. My beadwork is what comforts me. You will never know how I wrote a book about all the awards I got and how I raised my children in ceremony and in a sober home, that everything I'm wearing is a result of that lifestyle. You will never know because I am not doing it for you. None of us are. We are not healing for you. We are not objectified in our resilience of decolonization. And no matter how we do it, it's none of your business. So no, you can't touch my medallion. So I was raised in Akwesasne, New York, which straddles the border of New York State and Canada. As a child, when we would have to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, all the other Mohawk children would say, "You don't have to stand up, you're Haudenosaunee." And I'd say, okay. And nobody questioned us. In the summertime and in the spring, the parents would come and get their children and take us out for strawberry ceremony. And we were legally allowed to leave. And we would go and we'd have new dresses for ceremony. And we would attend longhouse ceremony and we would pray. And there was a lot of amazing culture in the Haudenosaunee people. The colonial word is Mohawk. And so within the Six Nations people, there's a lot of decolonization that has happened. A lot of it comes from waking up. There's a lot of self-governance, there's a lot of self-determination. There's still colonialism, there's still addictions, there's still trauma. But what I learned as a child was that I had a voice. What I learned as a woman was that I had a place. That I, as a matriarch in the training, one day would be hopefully a clan mother. What I saw as a child in the longhouse was before the chief spoke, the clan mother spoke from each clan. I came from the Bear clan. And they would speak in fluent Haudenosaunee. And they would talk about things that they were concerned about. And if there was any messages or things that needed to be done, they would give that direction to the chiefs and the chiefs would carry that out. There was so much balance. And I really, really loved it. We moved back when I was 12. Growing up in Canada, learning about things like O Canada Day and the songs, and having the father that I did was definitely different. I hadn't really seen my father growing up in New York because we lived so far. But when I moved back to Canada, my late father, Tala Tootoosis, was a really huge, huge voice and advocate for treaties, for understanding that the history, the context, and learning that the treaties happened before Canada became a thing felt extremely disrespectful and an insult. Especially when you see the placement of flags at schools, at institutions, organizations, companies, buildings, the placement of the flags, the discussions. And I've been in advocacy work since I was a very young person, since I was 11. I've been sitting on Alateen committees, youth councils, things like that. And they always helped me to encourage me to share what I think needed to be done when I saw something wrong happening. There's a really famous saying, it says, you know, when you see something happening, someone says, somebody's got to do something about this. Well, you're always somebody. And you can always do something. There is always an action. Even responding with your expressions of feelings is action. Even in how, no matter what, you always have a choice in how you respond or react to something. And so when I was thinking, Canada Day, what does that mean to me? Well, I know that it is really uncomfortable. I went 1 year here, and they were like, oh, my friends are going to be there. Come check it out. And I went, and I'm like, well, what is Canada Day? Because I never really understood. I mean, I lived in the stateside of Akwesasne, so I learned a lot about the state's history and things like that. So I didn't really know a lot about, you know, Canada stuff other than what my father was sharing on social media and at events he spoke at. And I seen a sea of red and white, and people painted their faces, and they're just loaded. Most of the people are just drunk. And there was just people just like, there was concerts, and I said, what is this supposed to represent? I remember I asked someone, what is this supposed to be? And they said, this is supposed to be like, we're proud of being from Canada, that this is like, we're in Canada, yeah. And I was like, but all I see is just like drinking and partying, and then there's fireworks and there's concerts. Like, there isn't really any substance. I don't understand. I don't understand at all. And so I never went. I also don't really like fireworks. They're kind of loud and they freak me out. But, I mean, if you grew up in New York, in Akwesasne, during Oka, when you hear gunshots at night, fireworks aren't exactly exciting. So, taking a look at the way things are run, the way things are done, if you ask, I've gone to schools and spoken and talked about racism, talked about rape culture, talked about intergenerational effects of colonialism, talked about the perversion of culture and how so many Indigenous ceremonial leaders have been affected by what happened in residential school. That didn't just disappear. That seeped through all the cracks of our ceremonial ways. So bad, so terrible. And we're now just starting to realize how we can dissect what indoctrination has done to our culture. It's not just this amazing culture that we get to just participate in. Some of it, most of it, a lot of it isn't even our stuff. As a therapist, I always know between me and someone else, I have my own trauma. The next person beside me has their own trauma. And if that person chooses to project their trauma onto me, then I have to choose either not to own it, or if I take it on, the way I see it. With colonialism, with things like Canada Day, every single day, Indigenous people are born with 7 levels of trauma. You're just born with it. You don't get a choice. And then we go to places like Shoppers Drug Mart. It doesn't matter how much money you make, you get followed. It doesn't matter what stores we go to, we get treated like we're stealing. It doesn't matter. I can't even run and go for a jog and wear all black. I'll get stopped by the cops and asked what I'm doing. I'll be suspect. These kinds of labels and stigmas are very dangerous, very dangerous. So when it comes to stuff like Canada Day, I mean, I've never liked politics because I grew up in Akwesasne. I grew up where we were taught that the Canadian and the American government stole that from the Haudenosaunee people. They actually stole the entire system and they replaced it with something very sick. And I never understood because to me it was very puppetry. You know, I'd never seen any change or anything acknowledged. All these children, these babies that were murdered, raped, these are not schools, these are torture centers. Schools don't have graveyards. Schools don't have barbed wire fences. Children don't try to escape and die because they're trying to get away. And then we have something like Canada Day. And they said it perfectly. Everybody on the panel said it. That's what we're celebrating. That's the raw truth they're still celebrating. If you see CTV, CBC, Global, anything about Indigenous people, you can see the comments. We conquered you people, they say. You are conquered. Take it, handle it. We're the rightful owners of the land. You see this. So as much as we have cultural sensitivity training, it's not doing anything. As much as we have stuff like reconciliation days and stuff like that, as a therapist, that's surface stuff. That is surface. We're not talking about the fact that the sexual childhood trauma and adult sexual violence has never been addressed. That was implemented through residential schools, through the fur trade, through the foster care system, through the 60 scoop. Nobody ever addresses that. The medical racism that happens, women being without consent sterilized, Indigenous women, these things are being celebrated with fireworks, wearing red and white and painting their faces. And to us, painting your face has a meaning. So it's super disrespectful to me. It's so much more of like a taunting of, we're still doing it. And we're excited, we're gonna celebrate it. And people, a lot of times, you know, that poem that I read, it is not my responsibility to teach non-Native people about my culture or about what a ribbon skirt means or what a powwow means, or for me to give you a powwow outfit and ask you to come dance. To me, there's no such thing as pretend to be an Indian Day so you understand that I deserve respect as a human being. I think it's all about always, you need to understand the context of the trauma. Not the painting, not the beads, not the feathers, not the horse riding, not the powwows, not the ceremony, not the praying and the beautiful songs that we have, not that. That is a result of the fact that we were resilient enough to remember who we were. The fact that we were able to say, well, we're just gonna keep going. We're just gonna keep going. This is really hard, this is really difficult for us. But just keep going, because those prayers were done when we did the treaties. So when I think about things like Canada Day, it's an insult.
Time for questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to ask, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. We're related, actually. So you can punch me later. We have microphones here. I don't know if you have any questions online, Carrie. You got a microphone there, Carrie.
I do. We don't have questions yet, but we invite everybody to, when you ask a question, speak into the mic so that our online audience can hear you already. And I just really want to start by thanking all of our speakers. The speakers here and yesterday we had John Lagimodiere, we had Shad Ali, we had more poets, Zoe Roy. I think that what I'm really grateful for today is hearing, like, let's let the artists help us decide how to reimagine Canada Day. Let's let the youth lead this conversation. And so thanks to all of you. And I'm going to sweeten the pot here. I have, as we're talking about Canada Day, there's another day, which is on Tuesday, which is National Indigenous Peoples Day. And we're really excited that we can join again in person for the Walk for Reconciliation. So if you ask a question, I will give you a buff that we're going to hand out on Tuesday to the participants at the walk. So just a little, you know, just a little invitation. I do have a question online. How do we move forward while we are working in educating the population? That's a big question. Anyone?
Is it directed to anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can start.
Yeah.
And I will just speak from the perspective of like a newcomer. And yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit. And in my mind, I came up with something I call the OMCA circle. So it's OMCA, right? And as a newcomer, I myself went through that circle, so I can imagine how many people have. And the first is the O, where you're completely oblivious of anything indigenous. Like, for most people in wanting to come to Canada, in trying to come to Canada, you're never told about the indigenous peoples, their history. You get to find out that when you arrive here, when you're walking on the streets and people point, them out to you and start to tell you things. So it's your first encounter is from a place of complete oblivion, like you just don't know, right? And then from that point on, you move to the next stage, which is the M in the circle. And with the M, just like Lyndon said, it's the misinformation, it's the manipulation of the mind, it's the lies. And so you hear all of those and you believe them. But at some point, when you start to learn, to read, to speak to people, to ask questions, then you get to the C, which is clarity. Now everything becomes clear to you. And then what next? You move on to the A, where you then become an ally. And maybe sometimes it's not a straight circle, maybe it becomes a square and then it's back to a circle, But those are the 4 stages I think most newcomers to Canada will face. And I think us who have this responsibility should find a way to develop toolkits, messaging that can confront everybody at the point in the circle where they are. So if they're the points where they're completely oblivious, how do you engage? What do you tell them? If they're the points where they are being misguided, how do you engage? What's the toolkit for someone who is at that level? If they're the point where now they have received clarity, what's the message? What's the toolkit? What is the mode of engagement? And finally, when they decide to do something, because, this is one situation where hearing is not enough. This is not a situation where supporting from your couch is enough. When you're an ally, then there has to be something you're doing, just like she said, chicken neighbor, and let's take it from there.
Thanks so much, Michael. Allison, there's a question about details for your event on Canada Day. Can you tell us the time and location or where people can find out details?
Chokecherry Studios has an Instagram account and I think a Facebook page as well. That's how we spread a lot of our information to the youth who come to the studio. So on the 22nd, I think we're going to be officially announcing it with times and stuff, but the idea is to have the event closer to the afternoon to the evening, just so then people are able to make it and it's not too early. So
great. So check out social media. Thanks so much. I have a comment here. I'm so thankful for the first speaker as I identified with the message of growing up in a white world. My Métis grandmother made a decision to leave her community and marry a white man, raise her kids as white children. A lot of this experience and history is new to me, and I'm very thankful for these events. Thanks so much, Neil, for your comments. Is there anyone from the audience? There's a mic there or here.
No such thing as a silly question. The one who asks the most questions is going to get $100 bill.
I will say I had one experience where I ended up in Charlottetown for Canada Day. They really love Canada Day over on the East Coast. And I was having this emotion that I couldn't quite name. Everyone around me was celebrating and, just this incredible tension and discomfort. And as I went through the day, I eventually realized what the emotion was. And a few years before that, many years ago now, my husband and I separated, and we had a lot of troubles in our marriage, and I moved out, and we didn't know what was going to happen, but eventually we did decide to give it another try, and we moved back in together. And in this moment, we were living together again, but were we lovers? Were we friends? Were we sleeping in the same bed or not quite there yet? Do I trust you? Do you trust me? And that profound tension is what I was experiencing on Canada Day as a non-Indigenous person, and thinking about where are we now? And so I share that story just because where are we now? It's tense, it's uncomfortable, but I have to say that, we made it through. And so the more that we can show up and be truthful about what we're feeling and just connect to whatever it is we have to do to make it work, maybe that's where we can be on Canada Day. What more can I do to make this work? Just a little story. Yeah, I'll bring the mic to you.
Hi, thank you very much for speaking. I'm not a newcomer to Canada. I have been here since 1990. And my kids are grown up, born in Canada and grew up here now. So my question is about land acknowledgement. And I have been here from before we did land acknowledgement, and now we're doing them, and that's okay. It's great. I find it as a way of acknowledging appreciation for the people who've been here, and also as a way of orientating myself to where I am every time it's done. But I'm wondering if there is a way we can think about Canada Day differently through land acknowledgement, to take it further than just having it as a statement before an event.
Autumn, you want to have a crack at it?
Sure. When I first heard a land acknowledgement, first time in my life, I thought, oh my God, I've never heard that before. To acknowledge it felt so amazing. But upon reflection, I've learned that I've lowered my expectations. I've been taught to lower my expectations, so something like a land acknowledgement could feel so amazing. And now I hear it and I think of it as just words. But I can acknowledge that, my elders and people older than me, the impact that had on them. But I think the younger generation, I'm noticing a shift. We want more. We want more, and we're not afraid to ask for more. And that's really beautiful to see. And so, every time you do a land acknowledgement or you hear land acknowledgement, make it with one promise of action that you're going to do. Do a land acknowledgement today and say, I'm not going to go celebrate Canada Day, even though I'm so excited to go hang out with my friends and drink beer and watch the fireworks and go to the bouncy houses. Every time you hear land acknowledgement, one promise, you can make it small, something you can do that day, or you can make it big, something that you're going to dedicate the rest of your life to, but keep doing it. Keep doing it. And it's okay if you forget your promises, but say it again. Because now we hear land acknowledgements all the time. It's standard practice. And so that's a good reminder of keep doing those promises to yourself. So, thank you.
Well, Carrie, it's 1:27.
Yeah, I think it's time
There's
to.
a hand
Oh,
up.
should we do one more question? Great.
I was just kidding about the $100,
Thank you very much for. Is it working?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the talk, for the panel. I am a newcomer in Canada, less than 3 years, but I lived in U.S. previously for many years. I'm Asian. I was wondering, is it also a common practice in Canada about I think in U.S. I heard the affirmative policies or affirmative legislations are ways to protect, to fight racism, to cover or to help like minorities like Asians, Africans, and Hispanics. As Canadians, do you believe that's an effective solution to fight racism here about Indigenous people? Also to use some affirmative policies and legislations? Thank you.
Anyone?
Yeah. So some of the things that have happened with First Nations people is learning when it's okay to practice our culture in public, when it's not illegal, because it has been illegal. It was illegal to sit and gather with 3 or more Indians. There was actually a policy against it. So laws and policies are a huge part of implementing and learning to help us to remember ourselves. And when people do, like the last question can be put with this one is, if you want to know what to do, learn how to hold space. Learn how to hold space for Indigenous people in the many capacities that there are. If you're in a hospital and there's an Indigenous person not being helped, advocate. If you are a non-Native person, advocate, use your privilege. Stick up for them. If you see a person on the street and there's 10 cops around them, and it is an old person, advocate. That is a child from residential school who didn't make it, who's coping. When you're in the policy seats, change policy. When you're in the law seats, change the laws. Do they consider Indigenous people? Do they consider treaty? Do they consider history? When you're in the school system, have those conversations, bring Indigenous speakers in, even if you're a non-Indigenous school, especially if you're a non-Indigenous school, have Indigenous speakers come in and talk about historical context of trauma, not just getting someone to come dance powwow, because you will not learn anything except that dancer's really cool. And it's really important to have these kinds of things because one day, my children are gonna be with your guys' children. My children are gonna go to the hospital, they're gonna go to the doctors, they're gonna go to a nurse, they're gonna go to a lawyer, they're gonna go to a school, they're gonna have a professor. And depending on what you did for your children, your grandchildren, for your families, how that looks will depend on what action you actually implemented into your life. And if you wanna know, there's a step-by-step guide called the Calls to Action of what to do. There's a huge thing, and you can look it up. And the calls to action they're really amazing when they're actually being done. And at every school, if you do work at a school, every school has a treaty kit. They don't use them. So advocate that they use them. Advocate they talk about Métis people. Advocate they talk about what white passing means. Advocate that they talk about holding space for disconnected and displaced tribal people, because it is very difficult. So we need you guys.
Thank you so much. Great questions, everybody. I just want to say thank you again to all of our panelists, to all of you for coming, all of our live stream visitors. And I also want to encourage you to come out to Allison the Choke Cherry event on July 1st and Rock Your Roots on Tuesday, 10 a.m., Victoria Park. And we hope to see you there. Walk with us. And I'd also like to thank some of our community investors who have really made this work possible. They are the Saskatoon Community Foundation, Sask Culture. We have support from Heritage Canada, Nutrien, SIGA, Dakota Dunes, the City of Saskatoon, the Saskatoon Public Library, the Intercultural Association, and SGI Canada. So a big thanks to them. And of course to the Remai, thanks again for hosting us. It was so effortless. They did such a great job of just taking care of all of the details, but also check out Adrian Stimson's exhibition Is it on this floor? Is it on the, yeah, it's on this floor. So go check out the exhibition after, and we're really also grateful that the Remai is providing us some snacks and coffee afterwards. So big thanks to you, and I'll hand it back to Lyndon to close us off.
All right, well, yeah, I have a couple of roles here. As one was the moderator, and I had to, sorry about cutting you off, guys, but also my other role too is as a knowledge keeper. Like I spent 35 years of my life learning about protocols, about ceremonies. And now today, as was told to me, now you're going to be sitting in the chair where I'm sitting, because I'm going to be gone. And so that's the role I play now to close us off in a good way. I'm going to say a prayer to give thanks for today. And I'm going to sing a short little song, but that's my role as like there's a ceremony part, and ceremony is very special to us as Indigenous peoples. But I can't help but throw a last little jab in there about Canada Day. Like from my teachers, what they've been saying is like not only do we need to follow those calls to action, but also just to follow those things called treaties, because we made treaties as nations, and there's a lot of education that needs to occur about what the treaties are all about. Our treaties are enshrined in the Canadian Constitution, and they're protected in there not to derogate or abrogate from any treaty that was made. That's what it says in there. And there's also like the spirit intent of treaty. And to me, that's the Canada Day I want to celebrate. Because as Indigenous peoples, we're never going to leave this land, but we also know the people that are here now are never going to leave either. You know, so I don't want to be sitting, you know, I'd rather be happy than sad. I'd rather be glad than grumpy, you know, and there is a reason to celebrate. There has to be, you know, because that's no way to live in negativity. But at the same time, there has been these injustices that have occurred and still occurring. And I can't help but mention this lady who lost her baby in Prince Albert. It's in the media. She phoned the police, you know, and she's the one who got sent to jail. She kept, my baby, my baby, my baby. And then as things turn out, like the father's charged with killing the baby. And like it just, there's this thing, it's called institutional racism, and like it really, really exists. And there are these things called biases and unconscious biases, and like they see us jogging at night, and oh, something bad, they got to pull them over. Like these things, they follow us in. It's true, they follow us in shoppers, you know. Like, but anyways, we have a ways to go. But at the same time, yeah, I love this land that we live on, and I love meeting people and sharing and talking and visiting and celebrating, you know. And anyways, I just want to share that message too. So I'm going to turn this off here, and I'm going to say a little short prayer to give thanks for today. And then I'll just sing a short little song as a way to end in a good way. So that's what I'm going to do, just bear with me. Hit my drum here my words to carry where they need to go. Oh, I sing a little short little song. There's no words to the song, and just kind of give thanks for this day here. just like that. So thanks for coming. You guys are quiet now. Come on, rowdy up here.